Hello, it's Ashley Koch from BioLounge, and I'm excited to bring you this week's version of the Clinical Insider. The topic today I want to talk to you a little bit about is how to get great results with your patients or clients and how to grow your practice, and just sharing with you some of the key things that keeps our clients coming back, referring their friends, and building our referral sources and our network here at BioLounge. For those who are not as familiar with BioLounge, I am a functional medicine nutritionist here at BioLounge. I also have a master's in functional medicine and nutrition. I'm a board certified CNS, and I'm the co-developer and co-instructor of the clinical immersion program and managing the learning platforms here at BioLounge. Megan, my other half, has a background in dietetics. She also has a master's in functional medicine and nutrition. She's a board certified CNS and supervisor, and she is the co-owner of BioLounge, our clinic here in Northwest Portland. And she's the co-founder of Fluorosophy Fiber, a product she created during the pandemic that is one of our most useful tools. And she's also the co-developer and co-instructor of our learning programs like our clinical immersion program. And we both see a lot of clients here in Portland, but we also work virtually with clients who are all over the place, and see a lot of complex chronic disease and a range of symptoms present in our practice. For us, we're really passionate about education. So whether it be education sharing with our community, educating other providers, educating our providers within our practice, we realize that education has really helped us unravel a lot of things going on in our own personal health journey and has helped us really support our clients and our students. And so I love this quote: the whole purpose of education is to turn mirrors into windows. And so the birth of having a learning platform and the Clinical Insider and the education we do in groups with clients, the education we do with our clients one-on-one, is to really help them understand the things they're encountering are windows inside their body and helping them know how to listen to the signals and read them. If you want to learn with us, there's a couple ways. So some of you might have received this through our newsletter, which is great. We have our immersion program, our 3-month program starting on Monday, January 29th. You can learn more about that at learn.bioloungepdx.com. You could also call our office and you could schedule an exploratory call if you want to talk about where your career is at and think about what is a great fit for you and if any of our learning tools could work for you. We do CNS supervision for those trying to get their CNS hours, and you can email megan@bioloungepdx.com. You can join our newsletter if you haven't already, and you can connect with us by emailing us at learn@bioloungepdx.com, asking us questions or anything that comes up for you. So many ways to stay in touch. So one of the first ways we get results with our clients is really by identifying their priorities. And so we do that first through a really extensive intake process. So our intake paperwork can take them some time, but we make sure that they understand it's important to fill it out, and our receptionists will reach out to them and help them understand they need to set some time aside because it will take time to fill out. But that history can be really powerful, or how they answer those questions can really inform you on what you're going to do before they walk in. And so before clients walk into appointment, I've read it, I've started charting and documenting some of the information that I think is going to be valuable, and it helps your conversation really flow. So from an initial appointment perspective, it can really drive connection with the clients. So if I'm talking about things like sleep or digestive issues, starting out the conversation of, I noticed that you have a history of feeling like you are experiencing reflux, and that you notice that it's triggered by X, Y, and Z. So just showing them you know a lot about them can help you build that connection. And so that intake process is really important, and having that paperwork before so you can build that connection. Or while I'm walking into my office, I might mention something. Oh, I see that you were traveling this summer in Utah. And anything they mention, just build that connection is really important. So now I have that intake, I'm building the connection as they're walking in, and we start out by identifying their priorities. So even though they filled out that paperwork, I want to understand what that brought them here. So that's often my first question, like, what are the big things you're working on that made you make this appointment? And I let them take as long as they need to answer that question. For some, that's one symptom that's been bothering them. For others, I had a 20-something-year-old this week who told me that their dad made them the appointment, and that was the extent of the answer. And for others, they will go on in full detail. I have a lot of chronic disease patients that have been in and out of doctor's offices, and they know themselves really well, and they will, within the first 10 minutes, walk me through the history that brought them to the appointment, which is really great. And then as I'm going through that, I also want to know, what do they want to accomplish? So I understand what brought them here, but what are their expectations? So just asking in different ways so you really understand what they're needing from you. Because while they're talking to you, you're going to start identifying priorities, but they might not be their priorities. So really making sure you're repeating it back. So I'm hearing you've been suffering from Crohn's disease. You've had a history of, stomach pain since you were a child. I understand that you're starting to think about making changes to your diet. So that's probably a great starting point. Does that make sense to you? So just reiterating what you're hearing and making sure the priorities you identified actually match what they're working on. A question I ask later on in the intake process, so I don't dive straight from what brought you here, or what are we trying to accomplish, into what are your long-term goals. But as I'm flowing through, I'll pause in other places and say, okay, so I have a sense of what's going on. I understand your diagnosis you've had in the past. I understand your family history. I understand your lifestyle from an eating perspective. But what are your long-term health goals? If we get your symptoms and the things that are bothering you in control, what is the long-term goal you have for yourself and your health? And really understand who they see themselves as, what do they want to be doing in their lives, so that after you fix some of the first things you encounter, you understand where they want you to go and where they want you to lead them to, which can build a more long-term relationship. In the beginning, hopefully the intake process helps you understand how they live their lives. And if it doesn't, then really think about the questions you're asking in your intake and making sure you're capturing their entire lifestyle so that you can help make changes to their lifestyle. If you don't really know how they're living, it's going to be hard to motivate and help them make changes to their lifestyle. So if they work long hours, you want to know that, and that should come up in your intake process so that you can think about, oh, cooking's really hard. Do they enjoy cooking? Who's cooking in their home? When are they shopping? All kinds of questions that can really help you understand how they live their lives. Who lives in their home? Do they share the cooking? So sometimes there's multi-generational households and they're sharing the cooking. Who are the people that are going to be getting, that are going to help or challenge whatever you're trying to do? You should know their history. To understand their priorities, you should know the history that brought them there. And so hopefully in the beginning, you're going to really understand that health history. And then I love the question of what has worked in the past and what has not. And that can really help you understand, like, I'm not going to go back down that path because they tried it and it didn't work, or it might identify things that could really help them. So now you have a great sense of their priorities. Another piece that really we're passionate about here at BioLounge is providing education along the way. So our goal often is to educate ourselves out of a job. So I'm happy to work with clients long term, but essentially I want them to master whatever we're working on so that if it comes up again in their lives, they can resolve it. They have the tools, they have the resources. We share the tools and resources with them. They get to keep them and take them with them. And so we're really passionate about education. And I think it's also what helps set you apart from other providers. So why are you doing the things you're doing? Why are you asking those questions? So that they can start to understand your background and how much you know. So often they come to us and they think, of nutrition as one thing. And there's so much we do in functional medicine and nutrition. It's not just about what they eat every day. We all often start and finish with nutrition, but there's so much more that we can do with our clients to address their, biochemistry. And so education is key so they understand what you're capable of. So tell them why you're asking questions. So we do a full oral history in our intake process. And we know that the oral microbiome is a window into the gut microbiome. And so I will explain that to them. I will take an oral history and then I'll explain to them, one of the reasons I take oral history is because a lot of the symptoms you described to me start to point me towards your gut microbiome and your lifestyle and your diet. And I have some concerns there. And then I explain why the microbiome is important. I give them an education and now they know why I'm asking these questions. Or I ask about their skin, their hair, their nails, and I explain to them it's the window into the rest of their body. It can tell me about things that are happening inside their body. I ask people about water damage in their home. And then I explain to them, well, you have a lot going on. You're experiencing a lot of symptoms. Some of your symptoms could be connected to potentially mold or water damage. And while I might not start there when I'm working with you, it might be something in the back of my mind I come back to. And it's good for me to know that you've been living in a moldy apartment for the last 10 years and you finally moved out. It's great to know. Hormonal symptoms can tell us about detoxification. So that might be a moment to start educating them on detoxification, why it's important, something we're going to work on while I work with you. And here's why it's important. Or dietary patterns. I'm looking at those because I want to understand what's missing and what I can help you get into your diet to help you improve what's happening or what you're encountering. Understanding their digestion is really important. So often clients come in and they say they have a symptom. I've been having a stomach ache. And I think it's really important that we understand what's happening in digestion from beginning to end and educate the client on this. So when I ask people where the pain is, often it's not in the stomach. They point to their lower abdomen area, they point below their belly button, and now I start to understand what's going on. And so I think it's important if someone says they have pain or they have bloating, you want to find out where it actually is. Is it below the belly button? Is it above the belly button near the small intestine? You really need to understand where the discomfort is. And then educate them. So, okay, so you're pointing below your belly button. That's actually closer to where your colon is. That tells me a lot about what could be going on. Know their daily bowel patterns. I really want to know, are they having bowel movements every day? Do they look like snakes or the shape of their colon? I will pull up the Bristol Stool Index to actually show it to them and get more information about their bowel movements. But the bowel movements are one of our best windows into digestion. And so sometimes they're like, oh, yeah, I'm having great bowel movements every day. Okay, well, what do they look like? And do you ever have loose or soft stool? And then you start realizing this person suffers from constipation from time to time, or they have loose stools that are unexplained. And that's going to tell you a lot about what's going on with their digestive health and start helping you think about some of the things you want to look for. Do they experience bloating, reflux, heartburn, indigestion, trouble swallowing? All of these things are great information. And then their oral health history. You can't really fully understand digestion if you don't understand their oral health history, as well as do they chew their food? Do they sit down and slow down to eat? Know they're eating inside and out. So this is one thing we talk about with our students and really dive deep into because often we have like a 3-day food journal for some of us in our intake process, or we don't, or we ask them about their eating, but we don't really get detailed on it. And if we're going to start and finish what we do with nutrition, then we really have to know what's happening in their houses on a daily basis or in their apartments. So I incorporate a 3-day food journal, and that's a great snapshot of what's been going on recently. And then I always ask, regardless of whether I have that, I'd love for you to walk me through a typical day of eating and drinking from morning to evening. And they take me through their day. And during that, you often learn a lot about who they are. So it's not often they don't just tell you what they're eating and drinking, but they'll tell you, I wake up at 5:30 a.m. and I take my dog for a walk. And then I have to rush around and get my kids out of bed and start getting them ready for school. And then I grab a cup of coffee and I often pause them because they tell me they grab a cup of coffee and they move past that quickly. Awesome. What's in your coffee? Do you put anything in your coffee? Are you putting sugar? Are you putting creamer? I'm starting to think about what the relationship is with food and sugar and carbohydrates. They keep going. They walk you through their day. They tell you what they like to do. I like to not eat before I work out. So then I go work out. I come home. You start to learn a lot about them. And then you can fill it in when there's missing pieces. Okay. You didn't mention any snacking in the afternoon. Do you tend to snack in the afternoon? Just go to dive a little bit deeper into that. I always ask who's cooking in the household. Is anyone cooking? Sometimes they're not. If we make any changes, who's going to be responsible for the cooking? When are you doing your shopping? Where do you like to shop? I can learn a lot about the quality of food and the patterns if they have a regular shopping routine, or they might tell you they hate shopping. What is the quality of the food? If I haven't really gotten a better understanding, what is the quality of the food you eat? Do you ever buy organic? Do you ever use grass-fed or wild fish? And they'll start to tell you about their priorities there. I also sometimes ask them about foods they avoid. Are there any foods you avoid? Why do you avoid those foods? And sometimes when you ask them if they avoid foods, they love to tell you about foods they don't eat a lot of. And I have to go in there and get clarity. Oh, okay, so I understand you don't eat a lot of wheat. So how often do you think you're eating wheat? Because avoidance when there is irritants is important. And so if they think they're avoiding it, you really need to understand if they're actually avoiding it. Because if you do anything like food testing or exploration on that, you need to know if they're actually avoiding the foods and what impact that will have on them. I try to identify some of the gaps. So if they told me about their diet and there's things I notice are missing, I'll start going into those a little bit more. Like, do you ever eat vegetables? Sometimes they'll take you through the whole day and I didn't hear a single vegetable. Do you like to eat any vegetables? Do you ever eat beans and lentils? What about nuts and seeds? And just get an understanding of, do these things exist in their life, or how far do we have from where we're trying to go and where we're starting? A great question we ask is, what do you crave? That can tell you a lot about what's the health of the microbiome and what's going on there. It can also tell you a lot about what's going on in their daily lives and the cravings they're encountering and they're giving into. And then, what are you drinking? So I definitely, if they've mentioned water, that's awesome. I ask them how much water. I'll even have them lift up their water bottle and count the ounces on the bottom and tell me how many times they drink it, and then provide some education on how much water I want them to be drinking. And then if they're telling you about water, what else are they drinking? Do they drink alcohol? What other kind of drinks do they drink on a regular basis? And what does food bring them joy or frustration? Like really getting a sense of their lifestyle with food. So if you know they're eating inside and out, you know their priorities, then I'm really focused on identifying something I can improve. Like all these little light bulbs are going off as you're in the appointment. Up, I notice they're constipated. I can fix that pretty quickly. They're incredibly tired. We talked about their sleep history and their sleep patterns and their sleep hygiene. I want to help them sleep. So before I see them next time, I want to send them out of here with a plan to help them sleep. They're in pain, or they have digestive symptoms or reflux, or they're dehydrated because they just told me they drink about 2 or 3 cups of water per day. So I'm going to resolve that. They have migraines. I have some great tools I can send them out the door with to address migraines. They're incredibly stressed. There's some really good tools for stress. I love Cortisol Manager in the evening. I love HPA Adapt in the morning. If stress is a major factor in everything they're telling you, you can go after that stress response. Do they have afternoon fatigue? So just as you're listening actively, light bulbs are going to be going off, and you're going to be thinking of all these little ways you can move things forward with them and things that you can do at that first appointment. As you're working with them beyond the first appointment, ask them to do hard things. So we sometimes are afraid to ask. So I remember before starting practice, I didn't really know how I was going to engage with testing. And now testing is a huge part of my practice, and it has really helped patients move their health forward. But don't be afraid to ask them to do hard things, and don't assume that they're not capable of doing the hard things. So maybe ask them to order that test that you think is valuable, and know why you're asking for the test. I feel pretty confident about the tests that we ask them to order and why I'm asking them to order it. And so not being afraid to ask them. So often I say, okay, we're going to start the appointment. We're going to go through the major things that brought you here. We're going to go through your full health history. You're going to tell me a lot about yourself. And then we're going to talk about some ideas I have from you, potentially some testing tools that I think could be useful. So I've told them at the beginning, and now I'm at the end, and there's some things I've identified that testing would really help. And so don't be afraid to say, okay, so I'd like to talk to you about a few tests that I think could be valuable. I'm going to take you through the ones that I think could be the most useful for you. And then we can talk about what works for you. And it's a choose your own adventure. So you're the guide, they're telling you what they want to do. So ask them about a test you want them to invest in. Ask them to make a diet change that you think would be valuable. So I've had clients that I order food testing, and we're going to figure out what the right foods are for them to eat. And that's going to come back in 4 weeks, but they're not eating any vegetables. Do you think that before our next appointment, when I see you in 4 weeks, you could start eating more vegetables? Eliminate an inflammatory food. So they might be eating a lot of processed foods, and you know that's not working, and it's going to be a challenge. And you know you're probably going to improve their diet. And one of the first things you're going to do is remove processed foods. So why not ask them, hey, do you think you could reduce or eliminate the amount of packaged and processed foods you're eating on a daily basis? Because when we get your information back, I'm confident that's where we're going. So we can start working on that now. Eat more plants. Take their supplements. Ask them to take a supplement. Some clients are resistant to supplements. I provide education. Like, some of my best tools are food and supplements, and I'm not going to have you on a lot of supplements forever. But during this time, this therapeutic time, these supplements can really help us move quicker and get you to the other side. Ask them to eat more fiber. Ask them to wear a continuous glucose monitor. Ask them to do hard things. We've asked clients in a matter of 30 days to completely change their diet to an anti-inflammatory diet. And we give them the reasons and they do it and they feel better. So one of the reasons I think we have success with clients is we're not afraid to ask them to do hard things. And it's going to be a lot harder to see big results if we're asking them to do tiny little things. So if we're afraid to ask for the big things, the results come slower, and then it's harder keeping them coming back to you. Another big piece of our practice is actionable plans. So we have extensive library of plans we've created to address different things our patients encounter. And so we provide those plans as a resource. So they're going to get a document. It might be 30 pages long, and it's going to have the plan and all the details around it. So if I'm asking them to do some therapeutic diet, it's going to describe it in full detail, all the things they can anticipate and expect, focusing on things like hydration and rest and exercise. It's going to have recipes that they can put into action. It's going to have ideas for parts of their day, like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or if they're on the go or if they're at home. So it's going to be a really great tool. It's going to set great tools, set expectations. It's going to review what you told them. I want you to try this therapeutic plan. This is what it looks like. The documents can set expectations. It can troubleshoot things they encounter, that many of your clients encounter when they do that sort of plan. It can help them describe the foods they're going to prioritize and the things they're not going to prioritize. You can provide menus and recipes and brands that make it really easy for them. So it's definitely important. I think one of the reasons our clients are successful is they walk out of the door with a plan. And I use those plans over and over again. I adjust them slightly client by client. But if you do a few of the same things over and over again, create a beautiful document with a really good plan that feels actionable to them, that they can put into action. And then they also get to keep that plan. So in a year or two, you might have to reset and do something like this again. You've got the plan, you've got all the tools, it's documented for you, and you just refer back to that document. All right, so if you want to reach out to us, please connect if you have questions about anything we talked about, but just really remembering that every minute you get with your client is a chance to really strengthen that relationship and to ensure that they're thinking of you, you're top of mind when they hear that their friends are encountering things, because you provided a lot of education, you listened, you understand their priorities, you're going to ask them to do hard things, which is going to result in them feeling better, and they're going to keep coming back and sending their friends your way so that you can continue to grow your practice. All right, thank you so much for joining us at the Clinical Insider. We look forward to seeing you in the next couple weeks with more content to come. I hope you have a restful weekend.